Seoul Land 217 DouLuo DaLu Original Novel. Chapter 250. See God DouLuo, Strength Infinitely Close to Gods. TL, Armored Raven. What to do? Tang San's brain was turning quickly. Before truly facing against Sea God DouLuo Bo-Sixi, none could ever determine the extent of her strength. But right at the start, she gave everyone a rude awakening. One should know that even now, Bo-Sixi didn't even use her battle spirit. In other words, this gigantic whirlpool she just released wasn't a spirit ring or a spirit bone skill, but something released directly from her spirit power. This easily held onto a spirit DouLuo, 4 spirit saints and a Xiaowu whose spirit power was unknown. Ning Rongrong and Oscar had already been pulled closer and closer to Bo-Sixi. At this time, Tang San's decisiveness was shown. He went back selflessly and used Bo-Sixi's pulling force to do so. Tang San understood very clearly that in the Shrek 7, Oscar and Ning Rongrong's battle strengths were the lowest, but they must definitely not lack these two. Without their support, the overall strength of the 7 would decrease by a huge standing. At this point he couldn't care much more. No matter what, he must definitely not let the two of them fall into Bo-Sixi's hands. If that were to happen, then with Bo-Sixi's strength, the 4 others would be easily destroyed. Without switching back to his battle spirit, Tang San depended on needle-tailed swift battle spirit to fly. In mid-air, his legs glowed in deep blue light, yet his eyes actually turned gold. Meanwhile, the Sea God Trident brand on his forehead shot out an intense blue light, which went straight towards Bo-Sixi without losing focus. It was Sea God's light. Tang San would never make his moves without a reason. The pressure caused by Sea God's light was one that could deter all marine creatures and sea spirit masters. Even though Sea God DouLuo Bo-Sixi was powerful, she wasn't Sea God, but just the High Priest of Sea God Island, and also amongst the ranks of sea spirit masters. As expected, when Sea God's light landed on Bo-Sixi, her expression changed slightly. Tang San clearly felt the pulling force on everyone was cut down by half. Right at this moment, 2 beams of radiant gold light was released from Tang San's eyes. Make no mistake, they were truly gold instead of the usual purple. The light was very thin, which seemed like it was woven from a few strands wrapped together, but facing these particular thin strands of golden light, Sea God DouLuo Bo-Sixi's expression became unprecedentedly serious. Facing Bo-Sixi, Tang San had no reservations. Or it could also be said that in front of Bo-Sixi's pressure, his own potential was stimulated to the extreme. This strike could be said to be the peak state of his purple magic eyes after reaching boundless stage. All of the spirit power was compressed into those 2 little golden beams without even the slightest outgoing loss, to the point that no one could observe how powerful they actually were from the looks of things. But what no one would feel, Bo-Sixi who reached the same level of spirit power could feel it very clearly. To her, Tang San's strength wasn't anything noteworthy, but Tang San's vast sea spirit power would pose a threat to her. Tang San only had this level of spirit power for a short time and used it in a very elementary way, so it couldn't be compared to her level of control, but it was still the same stage of energy, so she could not afford to be careless in response. Bo-Sixi's hands then clasped together and a red brand appeared on her forehead. The look of the brand was actually the same as the golden trident brand on Tang San's forehead. Only Tang San's was gold, and Bo-Sixi's was dark red. A dark red light beamed on her palms, and then suddenly burst forth, like a blade of light, slashing towards Tang San's golden lights from his eyes. Right now, the intensity of the purple magic eyes was displayed. They were the same as giving Tang San a way to release spirit power and turning into an attack. Without the purple magic eyes, Tang San's release of spirit power could only be in a large area instead of being focused like this. Bo-Sixi obviously didn't have such a power, but she could use her palms to gather her spirit power and then attack, with brilliant skill. Yet even so, the concentration of her spirit power wasn't as great as Tang San's purple magic eyes. Dark red and bright gold, 2 colors of light collided in mid-air. To put it more accurately, it was a soundless and lifeless collision. The 5 others of Shrek only felt their bodies becoming lightened, as the earlier pulling force had vanished in an instant. Everyone already planned for this. They didn't even eye the battlefield and accelerated again towards their own separate directions. With both hands closed on each other, the jaw stick in Bo-Sixi's hand had become sandwiched between her palms, which seemed weird as it made her look like she was going to offer prayers. When the 2 spirit powers collided, Tang San shuddered fiercely, while Bo-Sixi simply drifted backwards to more than 1,000 meters in the blink of an eye. It became apparent how the force of this soundless clash was so terrifying. Tang San's face became deathly pale in an instant as blood came out of his nostrils and ears at the same time, like a beaten snake. He was indeed stronger than Bo Sixi when it came to spirit power concentration, but when it came to overall spirit power strength, he was still inferior in comparison. Both sides reached a tie under the clash of spirit powers, yet now, Bo Sixi displayed her stronger side. Although both sides matched evenly when attacking each other using spirit powers, since the sustained force would be the same, right now, their reactions to it were not. She just moved backwards, yet she didn't bleed like Tang San, whose spirit power experienced a huge shock. Everything blurred for a moment in Tang San's eyes. He struggled to get to a normal state, and now, his brain became extra clear and found out the gap between himself and Bo Sixi immediately. Indeed, on a spiritual level, he might have reached the same stage as Bo Sixi, but when it came to the use of spirit power, the two of them were not on the same level. Bo Sixi's control over spirit power was too great. After the attacks collided, she used a direct and special controlling force to mitigate the shock after the collision. It should be known that spirit power could not compare with soul power. If it was soul power, Tang San had countless ways to dispel shockwaves as well. But to treat spirit power as soul power and use it to mitigate the shock, forget about doing, Tang San didn't even think about it. Bo Sixi was no doubt using her own actions to school him deeply. However, this lesson was tremendously painful. Right now, Tang San only felt that his head was so painful it was about to split, as spirit power was rumbling unchecked in his brain. The energy of Sea God's light could help him contain the energies, but they still gave him a huge pain. He could definitely not use purple magic eyes again in a short time even if he wanted to. Meanwhile, Bo Sixi had recovered and she was charging straight towards Tang San. It seemed that she thought clearly to defeat Tang San first, and then capture the others. After all, Tang San's spirit power was the only one that could pose a threat to her in the Shrek 6. When facing Bo Sixi, let's not talk about if she was spreading energy to threaten others. But when watching this sea god DouLuo, it would make even Tang San's heart produce a massive pressure. Pinnacle DouLuo's strength was already at this level of power, that I'm far from her match even without her use of battle spirit? Are we going to lose this way? If it were an ordinary person instead, perhaps they would have relented by now, maybe even losing the confidence in fighting back. But Tang San wouldn't. The stronger pressure he faced, the greater his rebound. He bit the tip of his tongue sharply and used the stinging pain it brought to focus some of his spirit, forcing the discomfort of his brain down. Without retreating, he charged towards Sea God DouLuo Bo Sixi. Looking at Tang San's persistence in his eyes, Bo Sixi couldn't help but nodding to herself. A lack of strength could be compensated through training, but if one lost confidence, determination and fortitude, then one couldn't possibly be at the top even after hard work. Tang San had no doubt possessed such qualities. However, admiring Tang San didn't mean she would show any mercy. With a light slap towards Tang San, it seemed that it didn't carry even a slight wave of energy. Tang San's eyes flickered. When he faced Bo Sixi, he disengaged the mirror image sausages effect and unleashed his Blue-Silver Emperor while releasing his 7th spirit skill Blue-Silver Avatar and 6th spirit skill Void. Using two skills at the same time, Tang San's appearance instantly appeared to be phantasmal. The blue-golden light made it appear especially dazzling under the morning sun. With a flash, Tang San's disappeared at the spot. Xiaowu's spirit bone skill teleportation was activated. When he appeared, he was behind Sea God DouLuo Bo Sixi and punched without hesitation. He didn't use abilities for this attack, not because of how powerful this fist was, but because of how using fists would grant him the fastest responses so that there wouldn't be delays that usually come after using skills. Meanwhile, 7 people were standing in front of Sea God Hall quietly. They were watching this battle in the mid-air. Standing here was a proof of their identities. These 7 people were none other than Sea God's 7 sacred pillars guardian DouLuos. Sea Star DouLuo sighed, for how many years had no one dared to attack Lady Bo Sixi? Sea Dragon, do you dare? Sea Dragon DouLuo was flabbergasted and then shook his head helplessly, I don't. Facing Her Highness, I couldn't even form any thoughts of attacking. I think you should be the same as well. Her Highness had already become the second god in our hearts after Lord Sea God. The incomparably ugly Sea Devil spoke, yet. This kid has courage. He even dared to attack when facing Her Highness. And he just used that spirit shock to make her flinch back. It's enough for him to be proud from this alone. The last time someone made her move backwards, it was that something called Clear Sky Sex Master, Tang something, right? Seahorse DouLuo added, that person was Tang San's great-grandfather. Didn't you notice, Sea Dragon? The hammer that Tang San used against you that day was just like that person's. Only Tang San's hammer didn't have spirit rings. Sea Dragon DouLuo sighed, this kid really has a bright future ahead of him. If he can really put 9 spirit rings into both of his battle spirits, then perhaps he can really have the strength to challenge Her Highness' strength. Sea Witch said, I don't know about that. But I wonder, will he have the conditions to defeat Lady Bo Sixi at the final trial of Sea God 9 trials? Sea Dragon frowned, don't talk nonsense. None of us have seen the final trial. The first 6 trials have precedence, but as for the contents of the last 3 trials, I'm afraid perhaps even Lady Bo Sixi can only know it by the time it really appears. But I truly wish to see that day come. I really want to see what the strength beyond Lady Bo Sixi is like. When they spoke to this point, Tang San's fist had already reached Bo Sixi's back. While the attack was a fist, from the teleportation to this punch, Tang San can be said to be doing it more than his standards in front of a huge pressure. Like clouds and rain, his spirit power burst out the instant the fist was closing in on Bo Sixi, with no loss of the power and straight into her back. Bo Sixi didn't turn around and her long red skirt moved slightly. It was like the air was lifting it within and Tang San's fist just landed on that red skirt. Tang San then clearly felt that at the tip of his fist, there was an irresistible mass of energy that surged up, and it made him spin in a circle, leaving him with no chance to use the next teleportation. His entire being had been thrown away. In that instant, Tang San was locked down by a vast soul power. In the next moment, Bo Sixi had already appeared before him. This was the first time Tang San saw Bo Sixi's eyes so clearly. They looked so clear, it's hard for anyone to think that she was actually an elder who was already more than 100 years old. With just a simple press of her hand on Tang San's chest, she stopped his tumbling motion. It was also at this moment that Tang San emitted a strong golden light, because when Bo Sixi's right hand pressed on his chest, he still felt a heart-exploding pain while being in the state of blue-silver transformation and void. As soon as he stopped, Tang San immediately used his first golden invincibility for the day without hesitation. Undoubtedly, he made the right choice, as the next moment, he was already crashing down like a meteor falling from the sky. The speed was so quick it made a sharp whistling sound. Boosh! He crashed directly into the sea without even raising waves. Tang San only felt his entire body tightened as he went below 100 meters in sea water, caught in the sands beneath the seabed while still going down rapidly. It was already darkness in front of his eyes. As the descent went on, the pressure around him felt greater and greater. It resulted in this from just a single blow, which Tang San dared not imagine. If he wasn't in spirit avatar, then his body would have been shattered under Bo Sixi's attack. She wasn't in her own spirit avatar to begin with, but she was this terrifying already. As someone who's already at the stage of title DouLuo in terms of strength, Tang San didn't even have the slightest chance in fighting back in the face of Bo Sixi's might. Now Tang San truly understood why Spirit Hall's great priest DouLuo gave heavy orders not to allow the Spirit Hall to invade Sea God Island. Indeed, if you were to face such a strength like Bo Sixi's, what use would it be if you were to throw more title DouLuos at her? It should be known that Bo Sixi could still use the power of the sea and Sea God Hall. In here, she wouldn't be that different from God. Tang San was unable to breathe, but he reacted before his movement stopped. A faint blue light emanated from his forehead and he disappeared. At the same time, his whole presence was gone from the spot. With 3 seconds of golden invincibility's protection, Tang San wasn't injured from Bo Sixi's attack. He also made the most appropriate response by striking out with both his hands, and the sea water and sands all turned into crystallites in a red light. In these crystallites, Tang San slipped around like a swimming fish while hidden in vast sea veil's protection, and quickly rolled out towards a single direction. Boom! Another sound of fierce explosion. The crystallized sea water and sands all turned into diamond dust. Tang San's reaction might have been quick, but it would still be dragged down. Fortunately the defensive effect of the vast sea veil and the toughness of his own being let simply fly out from this force instead of being turned to dust like those crystallites. Floating in mid-air, Bo Sixi frowned. Before this trial started, she hadn't told Tang San that he was different from the others. For them, she could not employ lethal force, and would even use her authority as the great priestess to pardon them from the outcome of not being able to pass the black class trials. But the same couldn't be said for Tang San, for if he couldn't pass this trial then he would die for sure. It was because he knew too much of Sea God's secrets. And that's why Bo Sixi would not show him mercy. Tang San's partners had fled and left him alone, which would prove to be extremely disadvantageous for him. Tang San's trial was Sea God class, which was doubtlessly harder than others by far. According to the standards of the trial, Bo Sixi would naturally have to take care of him first. That press and the fist seemed to have beveled the ring-shaped sea for 100 meters, and for her, it seemed to be like she just did a very simple thing. But she still frowned, and the reason was simple. She lost track of Tang San's presence. Tang San's spirit power was at the same stage as hers. With the protection of vast sea veil which could also cloak him and hide his presence, Bo Sixi being unable to find him was also natural. But Tang San had one thing he didn't know, which was that while being in the location of the trial, Bo Sixi could use the aura generated from the trial to estimate his general location and body condition. Obviously, Tang San didn't die, and was still in the ring-shaped sea. In front of Sea God Hall, the 7 guardian DouLuos were now as silent as frozen cicadas. They haven't witnessed Bo Sixi's strength for many years. Watching that noble and elegant lady Bo Sixi unleash such terrifying destructive force with elegant movements made all of their faces pale. Sea Dragon DouLuo immediately retracted his statement of being able to hold Bo Sixi back for a joss-stick's time with the 7 of them in his heart. Until now, they still hadn't seen Bo Sixi unleash her battle spirit. With just soul power, such a terrifying strength could be unleashed. What would it be if battle spirit were added to the mix? Using unimaginable to describe it was the most fitting. Tang San however had no such feelings, because he wasn't even contemplating about this. Right now he was thinking about how to protect himself by surviving under Bo Sixi's attacks. According to the calculation of time, it was only a few minutes from start till now. That joss stick's burning point would definitely not be past 1/6. Tang San didn't dare to unleash his spirit power. Bo Sixi wasn't like Sea God's 7 sacred pillars guardian DouLuos who were unable to sense his spirit waves. Being in the same stage, Bo Sixi would naturally search for Tang San's exact location with gusto. But once Tang San's spirit power would be used to counter the search, though that would be mutual locating on purpose, how would he be able to face Bo Sixi's attacks? Blue Silver Emperor right leg spirit bones flying skill was activated. Tang San skidded along the sea water in high speed, and using the cloaking ability of vast sea veil, even when creasing across, the sea water wouldn't show any waves. Bo Sixi was using the connection of the trial to find Tang San's location, but it was constantly changing as he was moving irregularly. Right when Bo Sixi was ready to attack the sea directly, she was shocked to discover that Tang San was already out of the sea and his presence was no longer there. It was then at Sea God Mountain. Bo Sixi couldn't help but frown again. Bo Sixi could unleash large area attacks without reservations anywhere else, but the same couldn't be said for Sea God Mountain. That was the sanctuary of Sea God, and there was Sea God Hall. If it were to be attacked, she would never dare to receive Sea God's wrath. Tang San was evidently clear about this point when he flew to the mountain. Using the time of Bo Sixi's hesitation, he also got to catch a breath. With his mental tracking, he knew that his companions would be scattered around Sea God Island by now. Bo Sixi would never find it easy to catch them. Now he just had to survive. While he thought about it, Tang San started climbing the mountain in high speed. He didn't dare to fly, because he feared that he would immediately be hit by Bo Sixi's omnidirectional attacks as soon as he left the mountain. His spirit power could still not be released, but he could feel that Bo Sixi's spirit power was coming after him. It was obvious she had a way to find his general location. 8 spider lances were deployed from the back, and Tang San travelled in the woods of Sea God Mountain quickly towards the top of it. Sea God Mountain was just several hundreds of meters in height. Now, without the obstruction of Sea God's light from before, in just a few blinks of eyes, Tang San neared the top of the mountain. Bo Sixi then hit a realization and knew what Tang San was up to. Her eyes once again shined in praise. Watching that burning joss stick, she flashed and floated down in front of Sea God Hall. Bo Sixi arrived suddenly, which scared the 7 guardian DouLuos. They quickly got out of the way and showed the empty spot of land in front of Sea God Hall. Right then, a wave of incomparably stern presence was released from Bo Sixi herself. Under the cover of the massive blue light, a gigantic golden illusion was gradually projected behind her like a human figure. The stern presence was coming from that. Although the face wasn't clear, it could still be seen vaguely. The illusionary figure was holding a gigantic trident. Indeed, this was Bo Sixi's battle spirit, Sea God. Due to Tang San's cunning, she was finally forced to release her battle spirit. 8 black and 1 red, 9 spirit rings lined up neatly on Bo Sixi. She didn't display any changes due to the appearance of her spirit rings, and she seemed to be the same old her. Just with extra 9 spirit rings around, that's all. Bo Sixi's hands were locked together before her chest, and the third spirit ring glowed. This was followed by a spreading of blue light like flowing waters. The spread was actually like mercury, moving out to all of the surroundings. When touching plants and rocks, the blue light would disperse on its own, but it didn't miss any single crack of Sea God Mountain. Now, Tang San was already nearing the peak. When he looked at the blue light coming from Bo Sixi, his mind was stunned. It wasn't because of how powerful the blue light was, but because of how it was completely one with her spirit power. The fusion of them was harmonious. In other words, every bit of her soul power also had a bit of spirit power. This blue energy completely had dual elements. With how massive Bo Sixi's spirit power was and a search was done with soul power in a mix, even when Tang San had vast sea veils cover, he would be discovered immediately if he made contact with it. Yet if he wanted to fly out of the mountain, then Bo Sixi would immediately give him a large area attack, leaving him with no means to escape. Although he finally forced Bo Sixi to use her battle spirit, Tang San's plans were undoubtedly ruined. Right now, his situation became even more passive than before. Just then, a scene suddenly showed in Tang San's eyes. Before this, when he led the Shrek group and received the trophy of being the champion group of the entire continent's high-class spirit master schools, due to Xiao Wu's identity leak and was about to be hit by Spirit Hall, Tang San's father Tang Hao appeared and used his attack to attract the attention of Spirit Hall experts, bringing Tang San and Xiao Wu away. That's right, the Sea God Hall. Tang San's plan was to retreat into Sea God Hall when climbing the mountain. There, Bo Sixi would surely be limited in her movements. Using his other abilities, there would be greater chances. Evidently, Bo Sixi also knew about this, and that was why she got in front of Sea God Hall to release her battle spirit. It was to prevent Tang San from grabbing this chance. Since you're not letting me in, then I'll just attack. When thinking about this, Tang San retreated in haste with vast sea veil while focusing his soul power. He raised his right arm and a thick concentration of blue-silver emperor formed quickly. His fifth spirit ring glowed, and blue-golden light mixed with that red spirit ring's energy waves. Tang San's right arm was covered in a blood-colored glow. The fifth spirit skill Blue-Silver Overlord Spear had evolved to 150,000 years level, and the name also changed, into Blue-Silver Tyrant Emperor Spear. It was a single target, 100,000-year spirit ability, and was a focal point attack. From the looks of things, it was Tang San's fifth spirit skill, but compared to other 100,000 years level spirit attacks, this was one with the highest attack power of all Tang San's spirit skills. The vast sea veil would only disappear when releasing mixed traces, yet wouldn't when focusing energy. When he saw that he was about to retreat to the bottom of the mountain, Tang San didn't hide, but advanced, while blue-silver domain was released instantly. He also ate an erect gold fly at the same time. The blue-silver domain was released while in spirit avatar state, entering boundless nature domain. Under the pressure of Sea God DouLuo Bo Sixi, Tang San's potential was surely pushed to the limits. The entire process flowed like a seamless work without stopping. One should know that he was now deploying both his domain and 150,000-year spirit skill at the same time. The consumption of soul power and the use of spirit power were all a massive burden, especially he was still spiritually damaged. It was more than his usual load. The difference between Blue-Silver Dominant Emperor Spear and the usual Blue-Silver Overlord Spear was that it's no longer shining gold, but bloody red all over. In the bloody redness there was a gold-colored brand which appeared to be dazzling. The energies all around the surroundings of the spear were frozen and wouldn't flow out. When the red light burst forth from Tang San's hand, it shot directly towards the sky. The speed of it was so fast that Tang San and Bo Sixi's spirit powers would never capture it in time. At the same time, Tang San's blue-silver domain was pushed to the extreme. In his brain, the spiritual collision had calmed down, and it was now completely in charge of the domain's functions. Meanwhile, Tang San slammed his fists into his own chest, and with a wah, he coughed out a mouthful of heated blood, which then splashed right on his domain. What Tang San had was Blue-Silver Emperor's blood. Even though his blood had extreme ice and fire energies, under the effects of Blue-Silver domain, the blood's energies were released completely as if the two energies were filtered out by force, making the Blue-Silver Emperor blood spread throughout Sea God Mountain with the domain. The plants on Sea God Mountain appeared to thrive at an insane rate under the effects of boundless life domain. If one were to look from a distance, it would appear as if Sea God Mountain was instantly bloating in size right now. Bo Sixi had to concern herself about avoiding damage to Sea God Mountain, but Tang San had none of it. In order to protect his own life right now, he could resort to any means possible. And it had to be right now that Bo Sixi couldn't care about stopping Tang San. Even when his location was detected, she couldn't launch attacks against him. The reason was simple, the blue-silver dominant Emperor Spear had formed a perfect parabola in mid-air with the speed of a bolt of lightning, straight towards the top of Sea God Hall. The speed of it was so fast, even Bo Sixi would find it extremely difficult to do so. After all, it was 100,000-year spirit skill. Even with Sea God Hall's own defensive power, as Sea God Island's Hierophant, she would never take the risk. Even this good-tempered Bo Sixi couldn't help but cursing Tang San in her mind right now. He dares to attack Sea God Hall in order to delay my attacks against him. This kid really has the gall. Now when Bo Sixi flew up in order to block the falling spear, the plants on Sea God Mountain all swarmed upwards with Tang San's reckless urging. They rose up like swarms of bees, rapidly covering Sea God Hall without acknowledging the 7 sacred pillars guardian DouLuo. The swarm appeared to be so crooked and vile, it seemed poised to crush Sea God Hall into bits and pieces. It should be known that although this was Sea God Mountain, plants were not sea spirit masters or sea spirit beasts. They wouldn't obey Sea God's commands. Blue-Silver Emperor on the other hand didn't have as high a standing as Sea God when in the world of plants, but there weren't a lot of other echelons which were above them. Under the effects of Tang San's Blue-Silver Emperor blood combined with Blue-Silver domain, it would be strange if the plants weren't in such a frenzy. Especially when Tang San seemed to use his own blood to nourish these plants. When he didn't extract a sliver of their life force, but used his own massive life force to infuse them, how could these plants not go insane? Their simplistic lives executed Tang San's commands without error. Facing these plants' frenzied attack, the 7 sacred pillars guardian DouLuo didn't hesitate to meet it head-on, so they couldn't see that Tang San's lips had formed a faint smile. From the start of the trial until now, he was finally on the active side of things. Hi, we'll continue p. Bye. Likes, comments and shares to whoever might be interested to listen. See ya, today only 2 episodes.